Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Murali Balcha. I'm CTO of TrilioData. So in this demo session, we'll go through what we do at TrilioData, and then primarily like looking at the OpenStack data protection needs. What are the unique attributes of what the data protection needs for the OpenStack, what you should be looking for, and then what are the common tools that are available for you to basically do backup and recovery for the OpenStack workloads, and also look at like what the complexity associated with all the tools that are available, and we briefly look at the Trilio, the solution and architecture, how it solves the data protection needs of the OpenStack. And then we'll also we'll go through like where you can find us, and we'll also have a 10-minute live demo of how the product works within the OpenStack. So my name is Murali Balcha. I'm the CTO of TrilioData. So I had over 20 years of experience in storage, virtualization, and the cloud computing. So who are we? We are TrilioData. We specialize in backup and recovery of OpenStack clouds. We are proud to call like we have around a lot of Fortune. We work with the Fortune 100 customers and partners, and we have various recognitions within the industry: CRN Magazine Network and CIO. So let's quickly poll here. In audience. So OpenStack, it is kind of varied, pretty diverse deployment. So I want to ask, like, how many people use OpenStack in the enterprises? And how many people use it as part of the managed service providers? Anyone here? And how many in the telco? Okay. So how many people deploy their OpenStack in a pure cloud-native applications? There. So more than not, OpenStack, people deploy it not just for the cloud-native applications, but it is mostly the mix of traditional and cloud-native applications. So when it comes to OpenStack deployment, right, typically you basically deploy these applications. You have multiple VMs, right? You have your own network that you provision, and you have a lot of storage that you provision. That is your application container, right? When you look at the traditional legacy tools, they only do the data backup. So whether the sender volumes or the bunch of files by running some agents in the VMs. But when you look at the scope of the data protection, you are only limited to the data that is deployed as part of your application. So the big picture that they miss out is the VM flavors, right? When you basically deploy the application, not only the data, but you also need to look at like what the metadata that is associated with the VM. So you may be using a medium VM flavor, or you may be basically booting from a glance image, right? But also you may be using some volume mappings. Sometimes you may be using Ceph volumes, or sometimes you may be using LVM volumes. And you also provision the network security settings, like the security groups that is associated with those things. So with the traditional backup solutions, what you do is you only get the backup sets, data backup sets, and then you are left to basically do the guesswork when it comes to restoring your workloads, because you need to go and guess what the glance image that you use to provision, and also you need to guess like what kind of volume types that you used, and you also need to guess the security settings that you applied for your workloads. So you miss out all those things when you are using legacy backup tools. Now, so obviously when you look at it, there is a lot of impedance mismatch between what you want to achieve at a complete data protection here compared to what you could do with using traditional backup solution. So on a tenant space, for example, essentially when you are going with the legacy approach, what you are asking is your tenant has to be a backup administrator, right? So that's not a scalable model. So there will be like SLA violations, there is a lot of complexity, and then expensive TCO. I can talk about the expensive TCO. So we work with an MSP, very large MSP, who is deploying OpenStack-based cloud for one of the biggest financial company, the bank in Europe. So they were looking at the legacy backup solution, and then according to that legacy backup solution, what they wanted is for their size of backup to manage, they need to hire 12 backup administrators, right? And then when they looked at Trilio data, and then they asked the same question, like, how many backup administrators that you need to manage your solution? And my question is, why do you need backup administrator? Like, it should be part of your cloud itself. The service has to be part of your cloud. And you don't need any backup administrator. So it came as a surprise for them, like, how much simplified our solution is for the OpenStack cloud, right? So obviously, when you have an impedance mismatch, if you don't use the right tool, you cannot scale your solution, and the cost of your solution becomes very, very expensive. Now, what are we, right? Trilio is the only solution that is built for OpenStack from ground up based on the architectural principles of the OpenStack. We are multi-tenant aware, so whether you have 10 tenants or 1,000 tenants that you deploy, our backup is multi-tenant aware, and it is self-serviceable. So each tenant has their own backup tab where user can manage, the end user can manage their own backups. That is a very simplified user interface that is available. We are agentless. One of the complexity is when you basically, your solution requires some kind of agent running in each of the VM. It can't scale, right? You get into a lot of issues with the upgrade path, and it doesn't scale for the cloud. And also scalability. How do you plan your cloud? You may be starting with a very small footprint, maybe 10 nodes or 20 nodes. And then if you are to scale it to 1,000 nodes, how do you do that with the current backup solutions? So there is no well-defined path for you to scale from 10 nodes to 100 nodes, right? And non-disruptive. So when you deploy, what is the disruption that could cause? And if you want to pull out the solution, what is the disruption that could cause for the cloud? So ours is a completely non-disruptive solution, whether you deploy or during the upgrade process, or if you want to rip off the solution from the OpenStack cloud. It is very well integrated. Our solution, our service to your OpenStack is no different than any other service like Nova or Cinder. If you look at, I will show you the CLI interface. Our CLI interface is no different than what you are familiar with, Nova and Glance and Keystone. Okay, so ours is add-on service to your OpenStack, like the Keystone Nova. Only thing is ours is not open source, but it is very well integrated with the OpenStack. So what do we do? How are we different than any other solution out there? So as I mentioned that, one of the traits that OpenStack requires is you need a complete protection. You don't want to leave a lot of guesswork on like how you restore, what kind of data that you miss in your data capture. You should be able to, with a single click, you should be able to restore the whole thing. So with that in mind, whenever we capture your applications, we go through all the services, all the core services of OpenStack, and then we pick up all the relevant information that is associated with your application. So we start with the security groups. Any security groups that are applied to your VMs, we capture that one. And any subnets, any net mask that as part of your open application, we capture that. We capture the information about availability zones because when we look at the feedback that we get from the deployment from the customers, so people use availability zones in a very not every deployment is unique, right? In one of the deployment, you could have 2 or 3 availability zones, and each of the volume is coming from different availability zones because each volume characteristic is different. Likewise, Nova VMs may belong into different availability zones. So when you go and restore, they want to preserve the same layout that they deployed. So we need to be aware of like what availability zone each of the resources provisioned, right? Likewise, like we capture the VM flavors and VM metadata and Cinder volume configurations. And also we capture the glance images. And we do it every time we take a backup, but for the data point of view, we do incrementals forever, right? So we do qualify with all well-known databases. For example, the SharePoint, the Sybase, Oracle database, and we are continuously adding additional databases, the popular database to our mix in the qualification matrix. So one of the challenge with OpenStack is the number of distributions that we have. So it's not like VMware, you qualify with 5.0 and 6.0 and 7.0, you are done, right? The comparison I do is like developing an app for iPhone versus Android, right? You need to basically qualify with a wide range of vendors to get your product, have the to reach the right customers. So OpenStack is similar to Android phone, right? So we have 4 distributions that we continuously qualify: Mirantis, SUSE, and Ubuntu and Red Hat. From the backup targets point of view, we support NFS, we support Swift, and we are adding support for Amazon. So you can configure Amazon Bucket as as a backup target when you deploy our solution, and all our backup images are persisted on the Amazon. Or any S3 compatible storage like Ceph or some other third-party object store that you can use to persist the backup images. Okay, so from the recovery options point of view, the OpenStack, again, like, depending on the size of your enterprise, some enterprises may deploy more than one OpenStack cloud, right? Instead of trying to stretch different regions with one cloud, they may use multiple OpenStack clouds. So one of the primary objectives that they have is a backup that is taken in one cloud, they should be able to restore into a different cloud. So we support that use case, but also our recovery is a lot more flexible. So even if your backup is coming in from one availability zone, you have the option to go and deploy that on a different availability zone. So the use case could be like you want to spin up a different availability zone or a different region for test dev purposes or for some other reason. So our recovery options are flexible. So you can not only deploy on the same cloud, but also on a different OpenStack cloud, but also different region or different availability zone. Right. So this is how our architecture looks like. So one of the things that when you basically build any product for a cloud like OpenStack is the scale. So you always need to keep that in mind. We cannot basically design a solution that only fits to a certain size, right? When you design a solution that fits to one size, you always go wrong with that. It could be 10 nodes or it could be 1,000 nodes, but our solution need to scale with the size of the cloud. So with that in mind, we architected our Trilio the solution in such a way that we have a controller path which is deployed as one or more VMs. So you can deploy on a KVM box, and depending on the size of the cloud, you can spin up multiple VMs. So that becomes a scalable control path. And then we have a data mover that is deployed on each of the compute node. And the data mover is responsible for backup and recovery of the VMs that are running on that compute node. So if you are sizing your compute node to run around 40 VMs or 50 VMs, and the data mover now, responsible for taking a backup of those 40, 50 VMs. And then you can scale that way without basically introducing any of the bottlenecks into the architecture. And the other aspect to this solution is whether you are deploying or upgrading, the whole lifecycle management can be done through DevOps tools like Ansible or Salt or Chef recipes. So we fit very well into the cloud management or deployment model that you already have. Okay. So we have a booth right behind that curtain, like a B22. If you want more information, please stop by. We can go through a deep dive into the architecture and demo too. Okay. So with that in mind, I'm going to switch my console to the live demo. So this is a completely deployed solution on a Red Hat OpenStack platform. So for any solution within the OpenStack, you have a tenant view where a tenant is only focused on what the resources that they have and how they deploy the application and how they manage the application. And then you have the admin view where administrator has view into how the whole solution is performing. So likewise, we have the same view. So we have the functionality plugged into the administrator view, which provides a PKI of the solution, like how many tenants are using our solution, and how many VMs are protected, and how much backup capacity each tenant is using. So that's the admin view. So let me go through that admin view first. So in the admin view, right, it gives you the list of backups that are running by various tenants. It tells you like how many full backups or incremental backups, how many VMs are used, are basically protected, and then how much storage is used, and what backup target that each of the backups are being stored, right? And then when you switch my view into the tenant view, let me say like I switch to the demo view. Demo is the tenant, and then I go to the project. When you go to the project, each tenant gets this backup tab, and then you click on the workloads. And so this is the simple user interface that tenant get to see. Like they don't see what the backup target is and all the complexity that is associated, that you basically tend to associate with the backup solution. So through this simple interface, user can create a new backup job. So give the description. And then choose the VMs that need to be part of this backup job. So you can choose one or more VMs, and the VM composition can be anything. It could be ephemeral VMs, or it could be from the persistent storage like Cinder, or each VM may have multiple network interfaces attached to different security groups, or it could be different set of Cinder volumes. So we don't put any restrictions on how the VM is provisioned. So user can drag and drop any VMs that they want to create a backup job from, right? And then once you say create, so it goes and creates the backup job, and they have the default policies that we apply. So by default, we apply a backup need to be done every 24 hours, but you can change that to the window of 1 hour, right? You can also choose how many backups you need to keep, whether you want to have them full backups or incremental backups, right? So this is the sample backup we created. And then within the policy section, you have, by default, we keep 30 backups, and we take the backup at the interval of 24 hours, right? Now, if I go back to one of the backups that were already created, right? This is a multi-VM backup. And the snapshots tabs gives you all the backups that are available. And then once you have a backup that is available, the user has 3 or 4 options on what they can do with the backup job. One of the option is one-click restore. So through the one-click restore, this is a big hammer approach when you restore the workload from the backup. With the one-click restore, we go and basically restore everything to that point in time, including the IP addresses, networks, and the Cinder volume types and everything, right? So this is a big hammer approach, assuming that you lost your production, right? And you want to restore your workload back to that particular point in time. But we also have other restore options. For example, the select to restore is, even though this is a 3 VM backup, we provide a lot more options for you how you can restore that one. So if you have a different network that you already provisioned and you want to restore this backup onto a different network without interfering with your production, you can choose a different network. Or if you want to use a different low-cost cinder volume that you want to restore for different use case rather than restoring the production, you can map the production volume type to a different volume type for restoring. Or so this one is a 3-volume backup. So if you want to, you don't want to go and restore all the VMs. You only want to restore only one VM for various reasons. You can choose to exclude that VM and only choose only the few VMs from the backup job. Also, you can choose the availability zone for your volumes for the VMs when you are restoring, right? So this is one mode of restore that is available, and the other option is mounting a snapshot. So you may have a 10 terabyte backup, right? But you only want to pick few files from your backup. So you don't want to go and restore the entire 10 terabyte just to pick up few files. The option that we have is you can quickly mount that backup, and then we ship along with our product. We ship a VM called File Manager VM. So you spin up a new VM from that image, and then use that to mount your backup image. So once you mount that backup image, we map all the disk images to that one particular VM instance. And then we scan the disks and then discover all the files and the LVMs, and we mount the file system, and we provide you a web browser view where you can pick and choose what files you want to download from that particular backup image. So no matter what the size of your backup image is, it doesn't take more than 2 minutes for you to quickly access any files you wanted. Or you can use SSH. You can also use SSH to download any files. Okay. So I have one instance that I already have a snapshot mounted. So this is an Exchange VM, which is Windows based. And then I have the snapshot mounted. You can go to, this is the web interface that you get, and you can quickly go through the volume that you wanted and download any files that you wanted from that particular point in time. Okay. And if you want to search through the backup images, you have 30 backup images, and you don't know where that file is, whether that file exists like 10 days back backup or 20 days backup. You can give the pattern here of the file, and then it goes through and searches all the 30 backup images and gives you the list of backup where you can find the file, and then you can quickly mount the snapshot and then retrieve the file. Okay, so I have only 30 seconds before I break. So this is a very well integrated solution to the OpenStack cloud. It's multi-tenants without having all the complexity that you typically associate with your backup product. So any questions? Okay, thank you.